Sunny, can you tell me if everybody can see the screen well enough?
Looking good. You just have to put it into presentation mode. Yep.
Okay, good. So just so you know where I am is quite a bit further south. So some of the things that I've learned about low tunnels will be slightly different for you when you try it. You're closer to the star up north where Beatrice Hemiot is, and she is your version of me, the local breeder. Okay, so we're talking about low tunnels and why would you consider low tunnels? One is to expand your season. Another is to reduce disease, which, we've been talking about a lot today. One of the first things we noticed when we were using low tunnels is that we were seeing a lot less botrytis underneath them. And I'm not saying, it's complete protection or anything like that. We also see a lot less anthracnose under there unless somebody pulls a weed up and gets dirt all over the plants nearby, and then you see some localized anthracnose, but it doesn't spread very quickly. Anyway, it's a huge improvement. Another reason you might consider low tunnels is because several studies have found that they pay for themselves. You have the extra cost of the hoops and the plastic over the top, and several studies found that they pay for themselves in the first year, and that if you take them over to the next year, you get additional profit, and that many of the materials are reusable in subsequent plantings, like the hoops and the T-bars. Some people have gone so far as to reuse the plastic. I wouldn't do that, but it's been done. Sunny, this is for you mostly. No, you do not have to raise and lower the sides of the tunnels all the time. When I first plant and I install the tunnels, if it's really cold, I'll lower the sides of the tunnels and then raise them later and then lower them again in the fall. So I plant in early spring, which is late March, early April. I'm a little slow this year because of all the rain we've had, so I'll be planting in the next couple of weeks. And I lower the sides until I keep the sides lower until the highs are up above 70. And the reason I do that is because under the tunnels with the sides down, you can count on the temperatures inside the tunnels being about 20 degrees higher. This is in Fahrenheit, 20 degrees higher if the sun is shining. And what you don't want to do is cook the plants. You and I know that strawberries can take some pretty cold temperatures. Right now I'm dealing with frost protection outside. So another thing that we learned when we were starting to work with low tunnels is the strawberry plants really don't do much photosynthesis after you get to about half of full sunlight. So if you're worried about how much light plants are going to get in the low tunnels, don't worry about that, please, because they really don't need any more than half of what they have outside. And they happen to use light more efficiently under the low tunnels than they do out in the open. The other key factor about low tunnels is temperature. And one of the reasons that use of low tunnels extends the season, you won't be surprised, is because it keeps the strawberries warmer early in the spring and later in the fall. Here I have to worry about getting too hot. So we found that this is crop modeling, which is, hypothetical. They're saying that if the average 24-hour daily temperature is over 79 degrees Fahrenheit, or if the maximum daily temperature is over 95 degrees Fahrenheit over a 4-week period, you will get yield loss. What I have found in my personal experience is that if I have 4 days in a row that are over 95 degrees, it kind of flips a switch in the strawberries, and they don't really start producing again until about a month after it really cools down. So I'm hoping you guys don't have to deal with that. One thing that was important to me was that there are different kinds of plastics that you put over the top, and I wanted to study those and how 6 cultivars that I have found produce fairly well for us. These are all repeat fruiting cultivars, or day neutrals as the industry calls them. I wanted to see if some cultivars were better than others and some plastics were better than others, and if there was some sort of interaction effect. So I had for 4 years, I tried 3 different plastics over the top. And one was what you might find readily available. I just called it standard clear plastic. One was an infrared diffusing plastic. And then I tried 2 different kinds of plastics that blocked infrared light, hoping for cooler temperatures here where it's really, really hot. So here's how they look from above. And here's their light spectrum. I think you can see that the infrared diffusing plastic lets in the same amount of infrared light. That's where you get your heat, as the standard clear plastic. And the infrared blocking films let in various amounts, lesser amounts of infrared light, and they vary in how much photosynthetically active radiation, this is what the plant can use, how much light of that they let in. But both of those infrared blocking films let in less than the standard clear and the infrared diffusing lights. Okay, hopefully that's good. We can go back to that if you need to. And the traits that I analyzed to determine what combinations would work out best are the typical: yield, percent rotted yield, market score, percent marketable yield, and berry weight. So what did we learn? I'm just going to cut to the chase rather than show you a bunch of graphs. What we found is that the cool light film yielded better in the hot months, and the test film, which is the infrared diffusing light, yielded better in cold months and after winter. This and the standard clear film is what I would try if I were a grower in Nova Scotia, the infrared diffusing light. Okay, now which cultivar? Well, first of all, know that Albion, Monterey, and Portola produce more yield the first year than the second year. San Andreas, Seascape, and Sweet Anne produce more yield the second year than the first year. Here, we prefer the first scenario, which, more yield the year of planting. Comparing the top performers, Monterey, Albion, and Portola. Albion, which I know you grow in Nova Scotia sometimes, maybe also Seascape, but Albion performed best in just about every aspect except yield. We all know that Albion doesn't yield the best, but it has such a quality berry, who cares? Monterey did well. Portola did well, except it had a lot of rot. And I think there's more to all this to consider. Albion performed better under the standard clear or the test films, the test again being the infrared diffusing light that I would recommend for anywhere north of here, pretty much, or winter production if you live south of here, like in Texas. I recommended that there too. Cool light is what I prefer here in Maryland, where it's so darn hot. Now for flavor, I'm going to go through this quickly. Did another study comparing flavor of 5 of those day neutral cultivars and 5 of our local regional once fruiting or short day June bearing cultivars. And we had panel that rated all the strawberries on a 0 to 100 scale. This is just an example for juiciness. These are the qualities that people associated with a good berry: sweetness, strawberry flavor, on and on. They're in order on the way down. And Albion did well on just about everything, so I think it would be a good choice for you. The black bars are the once fruiting June bearing short day cultivars. The gray bars are the repeat fruiting day neutral cultivars. And I'm just going to go through this quickly for all these traits. Albion is performing really well. Here we go, sweet and sour. Oh, sorry about that. That is my frost protection telling me that it's warm enough now. I don't need it. Sorry. Okay. Albion did really well here. Juiciness and firmness, there wasn't much difference. Albion and the top rated one, Portola, there really wasn't any statistical difference. So I would recommend Albion for you, but I also, I didn't have EV2 in these data, but I have tried it and it did really well in cool temperatures. So if you're interested in it, go ahead and try that. Now, low tunnels, there are many ways to do it, okay? So I have my own way that I adapted looking at some low tunnels that I saw pictures of in Israel, and I'd actually been invited to Brazil, which was really exciting. And I saw a farmer that put these together. Sorry, put that in a drawer. Up where you are, Dubois Agri Innovation has a kit that they put out and is easy for starters. They did that just after I started presenting talks, and I met up with Eric Menard and we talked about our various systems, and we're good buddies. So feel free to try theirs. The main difference is that I use baling twine to hold the plastic down on hoops, and he has bungee cords. So you need 2 people for his, and only 1 person can work with mine. I mean, well, you could have more than 1 person, but it is possible for 1 person to put together my tunnels. The University of Minnesota tried my way early on. Those black things sticking out are now down to the ground, so ignore that part. Cornell University in New York tried the Dubois system, the bungee cords. So did Penn State. University of Arkansas couldn't get the steel inexpensively. I'm close to Pennsylvania where there's lots of steel. They used conduit. And Johnny Select Seed sells a hoop bender if you want to use conduit. So there are lots of opportunities out there. And Sunny asked me to talk about the particular way that I put low tunnels together. So I start pretty much the same way you might for annual plasticulture. I start turning soil in February, and they make beds for me in March. And we put down 2 trickle lines, 12 inches apart. It's really important to have 2 trickle lines because the natural rain won't be getting down to the plants. So you're really dependent on that trickle, and 2 is better than 1 in case there's a blockage or an accident. At least you won't lose your plants. I use black mulch that's topped with white. It's called white on black mulch. And I put straw between my beds to reduce anthracnose, weeds, and erosion. It also adds organic matter. We plant in early March. We use bare root dormant plants of day neutral varieties. I use between 12 and 15 inches in the row. 12 is for my seedling field because I plant many thousands of plants there. 15 inches is better for production. You can vary it, whatever you like. And I use 14 inches between the rows. Yes, you can tractor plant bare root strawberries. That, if you haven't used a water wheel, it's very helpful. Okay, after planting, then I put in the hoops, and I try to do it when the ground is dry, not when it's muddy like this. And I put the hoops in. I've used 4 feet, I've used 5 feet, both work just fine. So you can save a little money with 5 feet spacings. I use 1/4 inch diameter stainless steel rods. Stainless steel is really important. Anything less is going to end up cutting through your plastic because it's rough. I use 1/4 inch steel after trying 3/8 inch and found them too flimsy. I would be willing to try 5/16. So you might want to try a few and see if you could bend them. They are 12 feet long, and each hoop is between 1.5 to 2 feet deep into the ground. To make the holes, I use this piece of rebar that has been flattened and tempered at the tip, and I use a battery-operated drill. And I put these stoppers on the ends on each end to mark the location that I want to stop at, the soil level. So if I want 1.5 feet in the ground, I put the stoppers at 1.5 feet from each end of the 12-foot long steel, and you use a 7/32 inch drill bit to make the hole, and then you push it on the stopper. You don't want to make it too big because then the These black things I call stoppers. I'm sorry. You don't want to make the hole too big because then they go up and down, but put them on a little tighter. The 7/32 works really well, and they don't slide. The stoppers are made from 100 psi potable water line. It's 1 inch diameter, I think, or is it 3/4? Not sure about that. By the way, I gave Sunny a manuscript that's really full of details. I wrote everything you might want to know in there, so I'm hoping he'll send it out. Okay, the next step after you put the hoops in the ground with the stoppers already attached to them is put in your T-bar at the end, or T-post at the end. These are put in wrong, by the way, with the little nubs facing the tunnels. You want them the other way. I didn't catch this while they were being put in, so that there's a piece of baling twine that I run across the top of the hoops to help create stability left to right. That's important for keeping everything held up. So, and that's the next step. I tie a piece of baling twine around at the base of the T-bar, and then I run it up across each hoop, wrapping it around once, then the next one, and keep going till I get to the end and tie it to the other T-bar at the other end. Then I get out the plastic that goes over the top. I basically drive my pickup truck to the end of the bed, and I roll it out like a long piece of toilet paper. And I have found that 200 feet's about all I can pull by my little old self. So if you're stronger than me, you could go to 400 if you want to try it, or if you had a team of people working it. But I think 400 is the maximum for irrigation. So anyway, mine are 200 feet usually. The plastic that I've used is 4 mil thick, but I've also tried 6 mil thick, and it works fine. It's not any less bendable, depending on what's less expensive for you. And don't get the ones with the holes in it, because you want to keep your plants dry underneath for that disease control we talked about. So at the ends, then once you lay it all on the ground, it's laying off to the side. And then what I do is I bunch where I'm going to wrap it around the T-post, I bunch the plastic up together like this, like in a fan, rather than just kind of wadding it together. And then I wrap it around that T-post, and I secure it with this poly, it's 5/8 inch braided poly, like boating line. I get it at Home Depot every year, and I always forget to get more. And so anyway, it's easy to get at Home Depot here. And I use a half hitch several times around there to secure it. That works really well. Okay, so at this point, then the plastic's laying off to the side. I had a picture that I couldn't find it today. I looked all over, but it's just laying off to the side on the ground. And now's when you put up the these loops of blue baling twine that I'm pointing at there. They are 20 feet long, and I cut several pieces and bundle them together in pieces in numbers that I need for each tunnel, and that I braid them together as a daisy chain so that they don't get all tangled up. And when I need to use them, then I just wrap them around my shoulders, and I, one at a time, I pull out the daisy chain, and then they're all hanging down like strings, and I pull out one at a time. I wrap it around my elbow. I make a taut line hitch knot, which kind of slides, but it's not quite like a slip knot, so it's stronger. It's more stable. Okay, then I toss the loop over I'm standing on one side of the beds, and I toss the loop over the other side so that the knot is on the other side, and I tuck it on my side. I tuck it down under those stoppers. Then I go to the other side, and I tuck it under the stoppers. And when I've done that to the whole bed, then I go back over the bed, and at each of the hoops, I loosen these 20-foot long loops, and I put them over the plastic and then hook it underneath the stopper again. Why? Because when I've got it all done, then I pull the plastic over the top, and it comes over nice and smoothly, and those loops are in place to hold it, even if it's like windy out, like over 10 miles an hour. It's nice when you're running the plastic down the length, like that, I was saying it's really heavy coming out of the back of my truck, so that the wind is under 10 miles an hour. But once you've hooked it under there, it's like basting if you ever sow. Then it's more stable and the wind can pick up as it does later in the day, and you won't have to worry about them flying off into the distance. And then after that, I twist the stoppers. I twist them around, and the directions are really clear in the paper that I sent to Sunny. But the thing that holds this together is the twine and the stoppers, and it's really important. Here's the twisting. You see, it's not that difficult. It's not that fancy. It's just you spin the stopper around and then you loop the baling twine under and ram it down, and then it stays. It's really important, though, once you're done with that process, to tie adjacent loops together with this little piece of twine at the top. It's real easy. And just make a little bow there so you can undo it and then tie it tighter the next year when everything seems to relax a little bit, or when it gets hotter during the summertime and the plastic relaxes. So that keeps the hoop in the loop, as I wrote down there. Now, some modifications I told you already. I tried thicker steel. I used the baling twine across the tunnel before I put the plastic on, down the length around each hoop. That really helps with stability. One thing I want to point out, I know a lot of you are big, strong men and you like to tighten things down really well, is that some of the fellas that were helping me when I was first trying this wanted to tighten the plastic from end to end, from steel post to steel post. That actually creates some instability because it pulls the first hoop down, and it's better to just kind of lay the plastic over top, just so that it fits, not so that it's tight, not so that it's loose, but just so that it fits. And it's kind of surprising. Just don't be tempted to go too tight with that. Let's see. Okay. All right. I can move on. Oh, also storing these things in between fields is kind of difficult. There's quite a bit of a mess. This can help, but what I ended up doing was designing this and having it made for me is basically a hoop storage rack, and this is the right size to pick up with a forklift. Some other things I found is that when you first plant, use about 5 pounds of nitrogen per acre. Remove the flower stalks and runners until the planting is established, and then reduce the fertilizer rate down to 2 pounds an acre, because otherwise you end up with problems with calcium deficiency. And, well, basically too much nitrogen is never good, right? I also learned to to water only after I had finished harvesting. Oh, you might want to know, when do I switch? When do I stop with the flowers? About a month before I want to have fruit. So in my case, I want to have fruit last week of June, early July. So last week of May, early June is when I stop removing flowers. Okay, I water after harvesting to avoid mucor. I tried using row covers for frost protection, and that made botrytis because it made it too humid under there. And then once I had it, I couldn't get rid of it. So I recommend not using that, and I'll get at frost protection methods. And this is what mucor looks like. It's really nasty, and it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. It's basically black bread mold, so it's everywhere. You don't want that. Also, if you want to carry over your low tunnels, which will help save costs, of course, I like to apply straw in the fall. For me, it's September, might be earlier for you. When I lower the size of the tunnels, and I do that again when the highs are 70 or less, that's a good time to put on the straw, because otherwise it can get muddy in there. The straw deteriorates in between the beds. Okay, I talked about cultivar uses. Again, Albion, Monterey, and Portola produce more the first year, but if you want to go that second year, San Andreas, Seascape, Sweet Anne. Frost protection can be done with overheads. I know it doesn't make any sense, or it might not make sense to you, but it works. Even though the water never touches the plant, which I was always told that's how it works, but that's not really how it works. All you're doing is you're adding BTUs to the field. You're adding heat units to the field. The water temperature underground is like 50, 60 degrees, depending on where you're at. And then it gets above ground and all of a sudden you're warmer. So you can do frost protection like this with impact sprinklers above, with the sides down. And here's an example of the temperature control there. I had the impact sprinklers on for 5 minutes and then off for 10 minutes. Mine's automated. You probably would want to keep going. But in the lower chart, it shows when the sprinklers came on. In the upper chart, where you have the green arrow, that's the temperature under the low tunnels. So you see that's above freezing, and the temperature is below the low tunnels. In the blue arrow, it's definitely below freezing. In fact, the red arrow shows that I was doing this February 22nd. So this, or 26th through 27th. This was a carryover. So this is my second year of tunnels, of a certain a set of tunnels, and the temperature was a little under 19 degrees. So it does a good job. This is just an example, the picture on the left showing that you can have the sides up. And the nice thing is the frost protection doesn't get the plants wet, whether they're up or down. Although plants get a little wet with the sides up, but not much. And if it gets really cold, it's helpful to knock the ice off before sunrise, because if the sun comes up and melts the ice on the side of the tunnels facing the sun, but not the other side, the whole thing collapses. So it's really important to get the ice off the side, the west side, for instance, before the sun comes up. And you may not want to do that. You may think it's crazy to frost protect that early, but I tried it just to see if it could be done. Okay, some other things to remember, and I may have mentioned it before, but bed temperature is what determines yield, not air temperature. However, the two are closely correlated. So you can guess what you need to do when you need to do it. I'm talking mostly about hot temperatures. So when the air temperatures are 95 and above for 4 days, you can cool the beds, which is the important part, by running irrigation in there, the hottest part of the day. But, or in the fall, I'm sorry, not in the fall, in the evening when the sun's gone down and you wet the beds, then that cools them down for the night, and then you lower your average temperature. Remember, that was critical. The average temperatures over a 4-week period determines yield, also the maximum temperature, like we talked about. If you had horticulture in your background, you may have heard about day-night differentials and wondered if that was key. We found that it wasn't at all. It was not important. It was the average temperature or the daily maximums. And so as you try low tunnels, find ways to manage your bed temperatures. That's the important part. Let's see, here on the top is a list of ways to cool the beds, but you're probably more interested in the list of ways to warm the beds. Using that test over the hoops, the infrared diffusing, or the standard clear is fine, and that's usually cheaper, so don't forget that one. Water in the morning on a sunny day, and that'll heat everything up underneath. But remember, after you harvest, so you don't give yourself mucor. Okay, runner management under the low tunnels. I learned, and this isn't low tunnels, but it shows the situation better. I learned that if you're absolutely overwhelmed, this is a way to manage runners. If you go through weekly and blow them from the center out, and then go through after a couple of weeks and trim them with a string trimmer. Both of these are battery operated. They are really helpful. They've saved me all kinds of angst. And so with that, I'll just end this with a picture of my upcoming cultivar coming out, and my contact information, my email address, and my phone number. Please feel free to use it. And how about some questions?